My name's Errol Clark. Today we're going to be talking about medicinal plants that the Aboriginal people use for thousands of years in Australia. Before we start though, I'd like to acknowledge the land we are filming this on is Kaurna land, and I'd like to pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we have 4 plants we will be talking about that were used by the Kaurna people in some way, shape or form many years ago before colonisation. The first one we'll be talking about will be the native lemongrass, commonly known as the native lemongrass by the colonists when they rocked up. Simbabogan and ambiguous. Native lemongrass is a strong citrus odour of lemon, obviously, hence the name. Traditionally, we'd use that for cold and flu symptoms and chest infections associated with that. Also, some skin sores that would come up when we'd be dealing with certain stuff. The grass is very adaptable to a range of soils, preferably well drained, or you can go into clay soil as well. Traditionally, we'd use the stalks and the leaves to make a tea, and could also use the roots of the lemongrass and combined with the leaves and hot water to make a steam remedy essentially, and we could inhale that to ease chest congestion and also infections. The essential oils from those are also used in a range of products these days, so be on the lookout for those. Some shampoos, soaps, scrubs and moisturisers are commonly used the native lemongrass these days. Some of the commercial uses were for the lemongrass plant was soups or sauces and marinades and cakes. So the Europeans came here and discovered it could be used for a range of other different things other than medicinal purposes. So this one can be grown in your backyard quite easily. It is also available from the State Flora nursery up in Bel Air. They're a very reasonable price as well, so you can grab a clump of these of about 7 or 9 and put them in an area, and then you can have your native lemongrass all year round for your teas, soups, curries or whatever you might like to use the lemongrass for. Generally it was found around South Australia and then some other areas around Australia. Next plant we'll be talking about is the native mint, otherwise known as the Mentha australis. It is a rambling bush. It doesn't grow to that high, maybe 30 centimetres to 50 maximum, depending on the conditions and where it grew. It's basically a native herb, and it's mint very similar to the European mint. And probably used in very similar ways. Back in the day, we used to use that for also our colds, and crushed leaves were also used to help ease the headaches and migraines, and also some toothaches as well, so you can chew on that. And this was also used by the Kaurna people and would be usually found by freshwater streams, so you wouldn't normally find this near the sea or salt. So those wetlands and native freshwater lagoons is where the Kaurna people would pick this from, and then have their little uses for it, and then perhaps collect that. These days the Europeans have grabbed onto it and they've used it in similar ways to the European mint, and it's chopped up in salads or used as a herb. You can put in with meat. Roast lamb is another good one. Obviously mint and lamb go together, so it's a very hardy plant once you get it into the right place. So as I mentioned before, it only likes fresh water, so I don't think it'll be a very good coastal plant unless you probably have some protection. That one is also available at the State Flora nursery up in Bel Air, so the links will be provided after the video for you to where to purchase those. So, and also they're at a reasonable price. I would have thought any soil they could grow in, a medium clay soil, even possibly a sandy soil with some organic compost mixed in it, so the soil isn't too free draining. So the next plant we'll be talking about is the Errol alternifolia, which is commonly known as the native fuchsia or the emu bush. So there was a range of uses for this, and it was utilised by Aboriginal Australians for another range of ailments, some mostly being colds and also skin infections that could have been arose from falling over or something like that. The leaves were essentially crushed up and then put on the wound or chewed as for colds and chest infections. It has been discovered that it has big antibacterial properties, and it has been used now by pharmacists to use for a range of ailments, and also for it contains compounds that affect cardiac activity. So that's another one with a range of different purposes and uses for. This one's another one that grew in the Adelaide Plains area, and the Karna people used to use this a lot. And depending on the season, so as you can see by the nice flowers, it would make a very good planted home. So planted in groups of 3 or 5, coupled with the other mint and the native lemongrass, you can have these very beautiful flowering shrubs that are also bird attracting. This one can be grown in any soil, sandy, clay, depending on your aspect or your climate. Perhaps prefers full sun. So also, if you're going to keep that in a sandy soil, just make sure you keep up the water. It is drought tolerant, so after a while it will become self-sufficient on the rain only, and you will not need to water that much. That also can be found up in State Flora Nursery in Bel Air. So for these little plants, they're like I mentioned before, they are very cost effective, and they don't grow that large. This one's probably about 1 metre high to about 1/2 metre wide, and depending on the water you give it, if you're going to give it a little bit more water compared to its normal environment, then you might get it to about 1.5 metres to 2 metres and 1.5 metre wide, depending on how much food you give it. Next plant will be the sticky hotbush, common, and the scientific name for that one is the Dodonea viscosa. So this one's a very hardy species. It's found pretty much all over Australia. The various parts of this plant were used for a range of different things. The roots, whether it be the leaves, were crushed up or boiled, and they treated things like toothaches, also help heal cuts, and for when you were stung by animals or fish such as stingray, it would help ease the pain of things like that. It had a few different reasons that were used back in the day. Obviously we didn't have the medicine that the Europeans and colonials brought. Europeans, when they arrived, they discovered the bush, and then because they didn't have their beer here, they actually used this hot bush for their hops to make their beer, which it's a very interesting fact, considering that they probably went months and months and sometimes years without an alcoholic beverage. So for the early settlers, I suppose, this was a good starter too, so they could produce their beer. This one too can be found at State Flora National Park, at the nursery, and it's also the same price as the others. This one, can be also grown in any soil. It can coastal environments, hills, any soils. Grows to a reasonable size. Can grow up to about 2 metres if you're feeding it a lot of water and nutrients. And generally in nature it would probably get to about 1 to 1.5 and maybe about the same wide. But as I mentioned just before, if you were going to have that at home, you could probably get that to a little larger. Together these 4 plants in a plot at home are very manageable, and I think you can, if you would like to, make your own little medicinal garden at home and use those in some way, shape or form. If it's not for medicinal purpose, you could use a couple for culinary purposes and using when you're cooking. So that concludes my talk today about medicinal plants. I'll be putting some of these fact sheets on the website, on the links to these afterwards, so that will have a little bit more information and some fun facts about these plants. So feel free to download those at any time, and hopefully we can see you and hear from your medicinal and bush tucker gardens in the future. Alright, thanks a lot for your time. Bye.